Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being the show where we talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Take Two, a crazy and wild ride of an episode. It turns out that Eddie and Sam wake up in a bed naked with no memory of the previous 24 hours, so they're like, yo, what happened to us? Because it's interesting too, especially where last week's episode left off. It's like, oh, did they party too hard? Did they kind of have like a hangover moment? It's like, well, technically to a certain extent, but it seems like there's more to it. What's interesting is the fact is they're not willing to tell anybody. They're not telling Berto. They're not telling Monica just because they're weird and embarrassed about it because they don't know what happened. Especially like on both their parts, because it's just, I mean, for one, it's something that Monica brings up later on. It's because for one, it's like, well, the fact of the matter is they like each other, but they're both kind of in denial about it. So it makes that situation a little more awkward. Because even when Eddie talks to Zeus about it, he's kind of like, Zeus is like, yeah, but it's because you're scared something might have happened because you want to do it. And because Eddie's the way he is, he doesn't like being out of control. And for him, it's like you have feelings for it. And the fact is, like, that feeling right there, kind of letting your guard down around something, that's what life's all about. But I guess like Eddie doesn't really get too close to people, you know, and Sam's probably the first person he's really gotten that close to probably in a long time, you know? And so if anything were to happen, you'd rather it be like, you know, it's like, oh, we did that our conscious choice. It's not like we were drugged out of, like, you know, and ended up doing that, you know? Because they ended up having Mick run her DNA, even Sam. And I thought it was kind of neat because Sam worries about her blood alcohol level because she's like, you know, because a time like this was usually back when she would kind of black out after kind of going on benders and stuff like that. So for her, it's like, you know, after being sober for like 4 months, she's just worried about it. She even goes to a meeting because, like, in one picture, it shows her and Eddie making out, but then it's like she has a glass of alcohol, and it's like she goes to a meeting, and because it freaked her out because it's like all the hard work she put for it, and it's like it undid itself. But we finally meet her sponsor, Tina, who's like, no, like, the fact of the matter is you came here today is like a huge step. Like, the fact of the matter is, don't focus on the blank page. Focus on the fact is that even though it's a blank page, that still says something, you know. And it's just like that ended up being a clue. But I thought that was such a fascinating thing because it also showed you just how dedicated she is to her sobriety. That, like, that moment, like the thought of potential relapse scared her because it's like, if I relapse, what makes it worse is because I don't remember, the not knowing is what was killing her. But she ends up finding out later on from Mick, it's like, no, like, you didn't have any alcohol. It's just like, yeah, her sobriety is still going strong at that point in time, 110 days now, you know. So that was pretty neat. But I love that Monica's the one that kind of figured it out pretty quick. It's like, yeah, you guys don't remember anything. Like, what are you talking about? And she's like, yeah, they slept together. And Berto's like, what are you talking about? It's like, oh, the way that ended. It's like, she even makes a bet about it. And Berto's like, I don't know about this. She's like, come on, bet. And he's just like, I don't know. And he reluctantly agrees. It's just that kind of awkwardness to it. But essentially, it seems like they met with a client named Jay Jarvis. And it's like, oh, well, Jackie. And it's like, oh, you helped me find my dog, Trevor. But as they're backtracking to everything, it's like, what does this all have to do with a dog? Because it ends up leading them to this which ends up being the sex club. And apparently they met one of the workers there because she's like, oh, you guys are back again. And it's kind of like, okay, this is weird and awkward. And it doesn't help them more because it's like, okay, we potentially had sex and we went to a sex club. Also turns out I didn't show up to a meeting I was having with Chris, you know, when it comes to Eddie. So then it leads to a house full of bodies, which is, I even like Mick being like, yeah, someone totally went, what was it, Batman on these poor bastards? Then Chris starts asking questions, and Eddie's like, okay, this is what happened. And she's like, okay. She's like, I believe you. And he's like, really? He's like, yeah, you, like, basically, like, saying even he's not stupid enough to come up with something that stupid and crazy of an excuse. So it has to be true, you know? But then it turns out that crime scene is being taken over by the feds. And lo and behold, who's there? Jackie. It's like, okay, so what's this all about? So she's an agent. She blacked out their memories because what isn't it called? the devil's breath, that's what was in their system that wiped their memories. They meet the dude Trevor Stark, who apparently this is all about, because I love that little back and forth between them and Mistress Kim. It's like, stop looking for Trevor, and you're like, owner? Trevor has an owner? Is that code or something? It's like, what's this have to do with a doll? And Mistress Kim is like, you think I'm stupid? It's like, in all honesty, I mean, not letting it slip, they had no memories and stuff like that. So I thought that was pretty neat. That's just a little back and forth. But they meet Trevor, and he's like, oh yeah, this is about some vial that was stolen, and that he's being framed, and this is some government like cover up. Oh man, you guys, your memory was wiped. It's like you don't remember anything. So, but Eddie figured it out himself. The fact is that, like, no, like, I didn't trust anybody. Like, Eddie has a hard time trusting anybody. He didn't know whether to trust Jackie or whether to trust Trevor in the situation. So they hid the file. And it seems like this is all connected to a movie that Sam did call Evil Soulmate 4, the ES Foreigner Fingers, which I thought was so fascinating. It's like, I talked about that before. It's like, will we ever get any more? Like, it's Hot Suspect, all she's ever done. It's like, no, we get a look at what she did before Hot Suspect. That was like this particular movie, which is interesting. And just everyone was kind of like, man, why did you do that movie? And it's just kind of like, because even later on, Jackie's like, yeah, it wasn't your best work, because she noticed that on Sam's finger and knew exactly what it was referencing to. That's kind of interesting that you would piece that together, but I guess it's just, well, maybe after doing a little research, having government resources, you're kind of like able to kind of figure that all out. It is interesting, though, that lo and behold, it turns out like, well, for one, I'm skipping over the whole like naked ride share that they had. They were wet and naked and just kind of like loopy and stuff like that, which is like, that didn't make things any better for their like nerves about this whole situation. So I thought that was fascinating. But turns out Trevor's actually a douchebag. He's the one that stole the vial and is trying to sell it, not Jackie, because it turns out like Mistress Kim is like a criminal broker. So obviously he's trying to sell it. And then lo and behold, the FBI shows up. You know, Jackie's there, and then he's threatening to release the vial, and she's like, can't let you go, and shoots Trevor. It falls. And it's like, at first, it was interesting to me because like everyone's reaction, like they start passing out. I'm like, holy crap. And Sam and Andy run to the decontamination showers again and start stressing out, rubbing each other down and stuff. Oh, rubbing themselves down in particular, but kind of rubbing each other a little bit, with weird, out of context. But nevertheless, it's like, no, the fact is, I said the term rubbing each, nevertheless, you get what I'm trying to say. But I liked it. Like, you almost see this moment of like passion between them where it's like, oh my God, we might die and we're up here close and personal again. Like, I was halfway expecting it to be like a lot closer of like a kiss. It didn't really lean into a kiss. It looked like there might have been the makings of like, oh, we're about to start kissing, but never even. Maybe they leaned in a little bit, but it didn't seem like they leaned in, you know? But then it's like, Jackie shows up and it's like, this is kind of like deja vu. Because initially I was like, okay, they didn't seem like they were too stressed about it. So I was like, okay, you guys are immune to it or something. I thought that's what the whole deal was going to be. But I was like, yeah, but this is vial. It's like a nerve toxin that would still take out the city. So why wouldn't they be worried? It's like, oh, never mind. It's because it wasn't. It was just knockout gas. They had switched the vials. I was like, oh, okay. So they had gotten there sooner and had already switched them around. Because apparently they had hired many detective agencies, but obviously them being the best that they are, they're the ones that ended up finding Trevor. It is kind of interesting going back, because even Eddie was like, yeah, good touch on a dog. She's like, yeah, I figured it would be. It's like, yeah. That is such an interesting thing, like her coming back and like, oh, thanks. And it just turns out like, because it's almost like, I guess that was just maybe some unrelated thing or something. It's like, no, that was kind of the crux of this case. Like I said, another case of just like all this twists and turns in the plot and everything I thought was kind of interesting. So, which is still kind of messed up that the government like wiped your memory. To be fair, I guess it's a covert operation. The fact of the matter is we sent you naked and put you in a ride share because it's like we actually had no other clothes. Every other thing we had on us had like FBI plastered over it. So it's like that wouldn't have done any good. It's like, but you send us home naked and you put us in the bed. It's like, no, you get in bed naked. That was all on you two. So, but it is kind of interesting. They have to sign non-disclosure agreements about the whole thing. And it's like, oh, why don't you just wipe your memory again? It's like, oh, just in case, I want you guys to remember me just in case I ask for your help again. You almost have that look between them like, yeah, I hope that never happens, which is very interesting. That makes this situation very interesting going forward into the future, working with the feds on something. Because it's like, oh, you two proved yourself very useful. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Even with their memories wiped, they still were able to kind of solve this case. Because initially she was like, yeah, we figured when we wiped your memory, you just assumed like you partied too hard and you just finally kind of like something happened between you and you chalk it up to that. But it's like you two, which I guess that's kind of the benefit of them being in so denial about how they feel about each other. They're like, no, there has to be another explanation. Also, just because they are pretty smart, they're like, no, none of this makes any sense because it's like our phones, our wallets being gone too, and it's like they have their own way of things. So it's kind of like, no, and our clothes being gone, it's like, yeah, this didn't make any sense at all. So it's kind of like, yeah, but it also shows you how good of a team they are, that they were, together with Monica and Berto, able to kind of backtrack a lot of this. I mean, if they hadn't come out like about what had happened, I mean, I think they still would have come to the same conclusion in the end anyway, because the fact of the matter is they were so determined, because they were so determined to find out for both their sakes. Like Sam needed to know, and so did Eddie, because Eddie doesn't like not knowing, because once again, it's like he has to kind of be in control and everything. So it does make you wonder, like, going forward, what this would kind of mean for their relationship, because it's like, yeah, they kissed and everything, because even they will never 100% remember what happened. It seems like even at the end, they don't remember. That day is still kind of a complete blank to them. And the fact of the matter is the kiss, and even like whether anything happened between them, it's like, oh, I guess there's some things that are better left unknown. But even though they're left unknown, doesn't mean they still won't think about it themselves, because it's like they'll probably still be wondering, like, did anything ever happen between us? Because it's like I said, it's a different thing where it's like they were kind of suggestible in that moment, and it's like maybe they just fell asleep naked is what I'm assuming. But because I know that they would rather, if something happened between them, it'd be like, no, because they want to be conscious of it. Because once again, they both like each other, they're just denying it. Maybe that kind of lowered the inhibitions and made kind of like how they were feeling for each other come out. I mean, we don't know. I mean, who knows what they could have said to each other too, like while they're in that state. I mean, there's probably no recordings of that. I mean, hold on, there might have been stuff in the cab that he said, but maybe they never watched the recording long enough. But nevertheless, so overall, a nice twisty episode. There's also some interesting conversations that came up too, because like Monica had brought up the thought, like, oh, if you erase the person's best day or the worst day, would it be the same person? It's like, oh, that's actually kind of an interesting thought process, because it's like, because on your best day, like, I mean, because there's like depth to that question, because it's like, oh, what if you did do that? But then at the end, she kind of says something just as deep too, where it's kind of like, no, it wouldn't change, which Berto was kind of saying the same thing too. But he was like, but why? She's like, well, because one day is just a drop in the hat in the span of an entire life. One day, it's one day. It can't, no matter whether it is your best or your worst day, it can't outshine all the other days in your life, which is just kind of an interesting thing. So I also said an interesting thing about like there being like a 31% chance there being an office romance. I mean, and he's like, what are you saying? It's like, what are you saying? He's like, nothing. So still something potentially happening there. So I'm still curious in the end what didn't, like, maybe I missed it. Like, what made her decide to finally take the bet off the table? Because I guess because it was extenuating circumstances. So it's not just like, oh, they were drunk, had a wild night or something, or at least they finally shacked up and he just don't remember. It's like, I guess because it was an extenuating circumstance, she's like, the bet's kind of off, because it's, like I said, just crazy circumstances that led to that whole situation. So, like I said, a crazy wild ride of an episode. But like I said, most of all, I am curious to see what this might mean for Eddie and Sam. Like, something they've already felt, they've thought about, but now, it pushes it to the forefront of their mind, like making them think about it even more, of like potentially there being something between them. So I think that's something we can expect more and more as the season progresses. So. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about in this episode. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good